topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Churchill said, "Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it." Kevin Hallinan believes that certainly applies to business. Welcome to Winning Business Radio, here at W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. And now, your host, Kevin Hallinan.
Thanks, everybody, for joining in again today. I am Kevin Hallinan, and welcome back to Winning Business TV and Radio on W4CY.com. We're streaming live on Talk4TV.com, in addition to at Facebook, and that's at Winning Business Radio, as well as available in podcast after the live show, pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. You know them all, right? YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple, et cetera, et cetera. The mission of Winning Business Radio and TV, as regular viewers and listeners know, is to offer insights and advice to help people avoid the mistakes of others, to learn best practices, the how-tos, the what-tos, the what-not-tos, of course, and to be challenged and hopefully to be inspired by the successes of others. Who are those others? Consultants, coaches, advisors, authors, founders, owners, and entrepreneurs, people with expertise. But, you know, most of those people, virtually every successful person that I've ever had a chance to talk to, has had some form of failure in their lives and careers. So while we all have to get our knees skinned once in a while, I'm driven to keep those scrapes from needing major surgery, right? I said it every week. Let's endeavor to learn from history so don't repeat it. I've spent the better part of my career equipping businesses to grow, from solopreneurs to small and medium-sized companies, all the way up to the Fortune 50. And I've seen a lot of those companies win, and to some degree, varying degrees, that is, I've seen some fail. And I've had the opportunity to rub elbows with some of the highest forming people around and some of those who probably should have found other jobs. And in my own businesses, I've had lots of success, but of course, some failures as well. So I like to think I've learned a lot from those experiences. So yeah, you're going to hear from me, but you're really, more importantly, going to hear from others who've developed their expertise over time. And today's guest is no exception. His name is Michael Russell. He is a very successful Century 21 agency owner, but he's the founder of Hope for Hardship, a nonprofit that helps those going through foreclosure and facing bankruptcy. Here's his bio. Michael Russell, an award-winning Century 21 agency owner and broker, recently launched Hope for Hardship, established as a nonprofit organization to provide complimentary services to homeowners facing the devastating threat of being foreclosed on and losing their home. You see, years ago, Mike found himself in that very situation. Addictions got the better of him. He lost his home, filed for bankruptcy, and damaged relationships that took years to mend. Michael says, "I've been through the gauntlet of financial chaos, being foreclosed on, bankruptcy, and all the emotional lows that accompany them. Largely the same things Hope for Hardship clients are going through. Only," he says, "I didn't have the knowledge back then to avoid bankruptcy, and therefore I lost my property. After facing up to my relatively tragic fiscal irresponsibility and making amends with loved ones I hurt along the way, I decided to help people in similar situations as part of my real estate practice. Hope for Hardship's services include consultation, representation on behalf of the homeowner in talks with banks and mortgage companies, administrative support, assistance, application services, and ongoing consultation. As a nonprofit organization, Hope for Hardship offers its extensive services free of charge. Whether it's finding a way to keep a home or exploring other options, such as a sale or federal bankruptcy protection, Hope for Hardship is committed to guiding homeowners toward the best possible income." Mike has two kids, Nicole, who's 29, and Garrett, who's 28, and he lives in Dartmouth, Mass, with his wife, Natalie. Mike, welcome to Winning Business Radio.
Thank you. Glad to be here, man. Appreciate it.
I'm glad to have you. Let's start with family. Tell us about Nicole and Garrett.
Hey, listen, smart kids. They're off building their lives, building their families,
Nice.
both entrepreneurial spirits, both, family businesses are kind of like a disease, the kids
Yes.
have a hard time escaping them, but I'm happy to say that they both did after working in it for a short period of time.
Mhm. What do they
Yeah.
do?
Garrett has some very successful online businesses,
Mhm.
and Nicole is actually a real estate broker and a mother out in Colorado.
Very good. Very
Yeah.
good. And tell us about Natalie.
Natalie is a realtor, also sucked in by the family business. Natalie has worked here in our company since 2007 when we
Mhm.
first met. And she is also she does some staging and design.
Oh, yeah.
But her new favorite thing to do is she does these live shows online for Poshmark, selling clothes, which
Cool.
she absolutely adores. Yeah, yeah,
Outstanding. Love that. Another entrepreneurial spirit, right?
yeah, absolutely.
So you live in Dartmouth. Is that the area in which you grew up?
I grew up on the South Shore,
Mhm.
40 miles south in Plymouth,
Oh, yeah.
Massachusetts. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, I grew up in Plymouth. Yeah,
The home of the Plymouth Rock. If it, and
yeah,
those, most of us have seen it, but if you're from out of state and you haven't seen it, go check it out. You'll be underwhelmed, even though it's pretty cool,
yeah.
but still you'll
You're
be
not missing
underwhelmed.
anything.
Yeah,
No, no.
exactly.
There's
Uh,
great ice cream shops on that street. That's about it.
1620 Hotel is cool too.
Yeah, that's
And the every Thanksgiving they do a parade.
yes,
Yeah, very
yes,
cool.
they do.
So what was it like to grow up in Plymouth? Tell the audience about that.
I love Plymouth, man. I love the South
Mm.
Shore, Massachusetts. I love the coast. Out of in high school, I started working on a fishing boat, a commercial fishing boat out of Plymouth Harbor, and that's kind of
Mm.
where I fell in love with the water. I always told myself I'd get back there in a mode of pleasure, not work.
Yeah.
That's where I fell in love with the ocean. And then I kind of realized that I wouldn't last very long in that industry. And my father was a Century 21 corporate employee for Century 21. He was a franchise support corporate employee, and so
Interesting.
he got laid off in the 90s during one of Century 21's corporate sales.
Hmm.
And it was kismet, really. He knew all of the players, the franchisees in the New England region, and knew what their exit strategies were and timeframes were. And he happened to know that the number one Century 21 office in New England that they were looking to sell. And so miraculously, he put that together. And once he
Wow.
did, I went to him and said, "What do I have to do to trade my blue collar in for my white collar?" And I thought it was going to be a really easy answer, but instead,
Yeah.
he said,
Yeah.
go to college. And so I went to college and just started working in the real estate business as an
Mhm.
administrative assistant, and just kind of held every position there was to hold in a real estate brokerage, through my 20s.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because I looked at the timeline, and before college, you started in that business
Yeah.
as an admin assistant. What did you learn from that particular position?
Uh, that is the most educational position available in a real estate
Mm,
organization.
mm,
I was always an observant guy,
yep.
and so I would observe the nature of relationships. I would observe salespeople. I observed consumers and what they said when they picked up the phone.
Hmm.
I was uh, I was tremendously polite on the phone. There were a lot of top producers who preferred that I answered the phone, and I think I just took pride in the job, whatever it was,
Yeah.
because I treated it like it was my own from the very beginning.
Mm.
I didn't even have to go to class. I probably shouldn't publicize that, but hey, the statute of limitations has passed on that.
That's right.
I didn't take the course. That position alone was enough to get me to pass the real estate exam
Wow.
and what I learned in that position.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's incredible.
Yeah.
And then you knew you wanted to major in business administration. Was that part of that as well?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it just fit, I
Mhm.
think it just fit. I kind of knew what I was doing. Probably made me not take college as seriously as perhaps I could have.
Hmm.
I kind of, most of the people that you're around in college don't really know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And I kind of believed from the very beginning that I knew exactly what I was going to do.
Yeah, I was almost one of those. I went to school for electrical engineering, and my dad tapped me on the shoulder I was in a 5-year program at UMass, Don't tell anybody, but that's because I didn't do well my first year.
Sure.
Yeah, but keep that between us, okay? But during third and fourth years, he tapped me on the shoulder and asked me to come sell, and I never looked back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Absolutely. I get it. No shame there, man.
Nope.
My claim to fame
Nope.
my freshman year was I got arrested twice in the same week by the same cop on the same street.
Oh man.
So, it's fine. I made it.
Yeah.
I made it.
Do as we do. Do as we say, not as we do. All right. Then you became the director of marketing at the agency. Yeah. Tell us about that role.
Yep. Man, whole different world, right? It was print media. It was, there was a long time where we didn't even hire someone younger than me for probably the first 12 years I was in the business. So I was just the young guy around the office. Mm-hmm. And with the advent of the internet, I can't believe I'm saying that, back then, I was forced to become technologically proficient. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of fell into my lap. And so with websites were just coming around, and so I really focused my energies on print in the beginning, and then the internet came around, and we started playing around with that. It was because sometimes it feels like a simpler time back then. Sometimes it feels like a simpler time.
I hear you. Most important lesson learned, probably the hardest question, as a director of marketing.
It's not about attracting consumers. It's about attracting talented salespeople.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. You can do all the work in the world to make your phone ring or make people walk into your building. But if you don't have competent people that can help steward those people into home ownership or whatever they need, and you're, throwing good money after bad.
So you got the real estate license, an agent license, I'm imagining, right?
The first one, yeah.
The first one, the agent license, yeah. Broker was later, probably. But were you selling homes during that time period as well?
I was, yep. Yeah. Yep. After, probably after, I don't know, 6 years, probably as an administrative assistant, marketing director, or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. That was, that was an outstanding, that was the single best education in human behavior I ever received. Far greater than any formal education. And there was a boom time, 04, 05, 06, followed by the biggest financial tragedy that ever hit, the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, it always resonated with me. The experiences of selling real estate, it's a wide spectrum, and you see it all. And you see the elation and excitement of the first-time home buyer, or someone that's leveling up and buying their dream home, and all those things. Those things never resonated with me as much as the sad stories. I always had an affinity for dealing with people who were struggling in some fashion. And, the simplicity of it is death, divorce, disaster. Those are three constants in real estate transactions that happen. Right. There are great reasons and bad reasons to sell or buy property. But, and then I worked for Freddie Mac as a listing representative during the 08, 09, 10, 11, 12, during the worst time. And I began to witness things that, I just never thought I'd see, is something called a lockout. I probably saw it 200 or 300 times, where I have to go accompany the sheriff, a box truck, and 2 movers to knock on the door once the bank has foreclosed, and say, whatever you want to keep, they'll put in the truck. We have an hour. When we're finished, we're changing the locks, and you're on the curb.
Holy cow.
And the grief and shock and dismay that resonated with me, and I probably helped something in the neighborhood of 500 people sell property short, which means for less than the amount owed on the property. Values had plummeted, and people were underwater on properties. And so I did a lot of short sale work too, which I really enjoyed doing. There was a boundary. I was a buffer between the consumer and the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot similar to what I'm doing with this Hope for Hardship. Is that's the most value that I provide here. When it's you that's going through this, finding the patience, the wherewithal, and the calmness to communicate with a bank, trying to negotiate with them some sort of assistance is very challenging, because, part of this process of getting assistance from a bank is arduous, to say the least. And you sent them a column and they say they didn't get it. For the consumer to actually make those calls themselves, they throw their hands up far faster than me, who is not burdened by owning that problem. And so I enjoyed being that emotional buffer where I had the sufficient empathy, care to help the consumer through the tough time, and the proficiency and experience to deal with the bank.
All right, let's take a pause right there. Mike will be back in just a minute. Everybody will be back with Mike Russell of Hope for Hardship in about 1 minute.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
Have you ever dreamt of being on the radio? Well, now is your chance. Be a radio show guest on the #1 ranked internet radio station and promote you and your business for free. Yes, you heard it, free. Business advertising right here on W4CY.com. Call 561-506-4031 now to get booked on one of our shows. That's 561-506-4031. Get your free advertising now.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind: to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
We're back with Mike Russell. He is the founder of Hope for Hardship. And Mike, you were talking a bit about being that buffer because you're not emotionally involved. You have the empathy because you were that guy at one point. You were that family or person at one point.
Yeah.
But before we get back into that, I want to ask you just a couple more questions about the brokerage. How big's your team?
About 70 people.
Wow, 70 people. And what areas? It's all Southeastern Mass.
We handle all the state of Mass and Rhode Island.
Oh, okay. Very good. And what was the most difficult part of either starting? Actually, it sounds like you probably took over.
I did, sure. My father.
Tell us just a little bit about that transition.
Yeah, it was tumultuous. We were in financial straits. The economy had tanked. Tremendously poor decisions of my own put us in an even bigger fiscal crunch, which really splintered my relationship with my father. And my father walked away, really. He walked away from the business, and he didn't have a lot of faith that it was going to survive. We had filed corporate bankruptcy. I spent the better part of a year proving to the trustee at the bankruptcy court that we could be solvent by sharing books on a monthly basis and editorializing them to describe the efforts I was making in order to keep the business afloat. And I lived really in constant fear of them converting it to a Chapter 7 and putting us out of business.
Wow.
And while I did that and, had sleepless nights, I came in and put on a face that made it look like everything was fine when it wasn't. It wasn't even close to fine. Wow. It was the hardest thing I went through in my whole life was that point. And it wasn't the financial stuff in hindsight, although I thought that was the most important thing, was the easy part. It was the splintering of relationships, that the collateral damage that I created with poor financial decisions over the course of my life lasted the better part of a decade as it ripped through my family.
Mm.
And it took me the better part of 10 years to resolve those issues and make amends for the decisions I had made.
So what came first, the financial hardship, that financial stress, or substance?
Well, the behaviors were always there, right?
Mm.
So yeah, I would say that the substance came first.
Mm.
Yeah, in large part, Yeah. My father and I were gamblers. We loved to gamble,
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
I was just a kid, and we kind of, there was culpability all around, but I
Sure.
certainly had the most of it. But we we played a little game. We had the real books, and then we had the books that were shown to my mother, and that's kind of the arrangement that we had. And I learned that pretty early. And then
Yeah.
in a relatively short amount of time, what I saw being done there, I eventually did to my father.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was my tumultuous experience with a family business. And
So
yeah.
how did you, it's not a flip of a switch. You said it's a decade. I mean, how
Sure.
did you come through it? You clearly did. Better off
Sure.
for it.
Yeah.
I used to not like talking about a bankruptcy that I went through, and ours was a 7, and it was a liquidation as well as a personal bankruptcy. I mean, it was awful. I would never want anybody to go through that. That was
Yeah.
late 90s. And that
Sure.
was a business that failed. And long story short, I won't even get into it. I
Yeah.
used to hate to talk about it. Now I'm talking about it on the air. But the
Sure.
reason I say that is it's made me in part who I am. So talk about how you got through that.
I got sober.
Mm.
I got sober.
Mm.
For the last 8 years of my life, I've been living a life of recovery,
That's awesome.
which is where, which I wouldn't be anywhere near where I am today if not for that. There are some things that were tremendously hard. My father passed away before I was able to make a living amends with my father.
Yeah.
So I was never able to solve that in the living world. But I was pretty selfish in the beginning, if I'm being honest. The way that I turned this business around is I made it all about the money.
Mm-hmm.
And I went after that top line, ego-driven dollar. And I did whatever I had to do, and I said whatever I had to say to get what I wanted, and it was all monetary based.
Mm-hmm.
It was largely ego-driven.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't stand the idea of anyone thinking I failed. That's what started fixing the business.
Mm.
But eventually that, getting sober changed that, and there was a lot of true self, false self stuff going on with me. And I was trying to pretend I was someone I wasn't. And, all the typical things that you see, I think, I suffered from, I was an egomaniac with an inferiority complex, and I operated that way on a daily basis. And so in the beginning, I did whatever I had to do to not be closed down by the bankruptcy court. I built the largest sales team that I could to generate enough cash flow to satisfy the bankruptcy court. After that, going on for a couple of years, I got sober. And I started to change the way I lived. And I started to take care of the things and become more fiscally responsible. I stopped being the spender that I was most of my life. I stopped caring about what everyone else thinks, and stopped believing that everyone was thinking about me as much as I thought they were, and all those kinds of things. And really just began to change who I was. My mother bailed me out of problems in this business 15 times to the tune of $25,000 to $50,000 a pop.
Yeah. Wow.
No questions asked. And so I've been making amends to her ever since. 2 years ago, I bought her a house, and I never thought I'd be able to say that. And I'm a firm believer. that if I can turn my life around and my circumstance around, that absolutely anybody can. And the vast majority of the people I meet who have fallen behind on their mortgage payments have many other problems in their life as well. And a lot of them I relate to. It's actually a lesser amount of people who fall behind on their mortgage, in my experience, are true victims. There is a small segment who health, things that are outside of their control that put them in this situation.
Right.
But I would say that the vast majority of the people that I meet are in some phase of denial. And I see way more fingers than I do thumbs. Right. And I think that's just, the human condition, right? It's everyone else's fault. And I relate to that. And I have a way of relating to people who are in that place in their life. And part of the deal I made in sobriety was, listen, just pay it forward to the next man or woman. That's the deal. That's the bargain. And so because of my unique experience, being in this real estate business, it's just, this stuff is so elementary to me. Like, it kills me sometimes. There are so many companies, and I never want to disparage or cast judgment. Everyone has a business model.
Right.
There are attorneys, and when you get a notice of intent to foreclose recorded, it becomes public record. And what happens from that is a whole bunch of people come out of the woodwork that are trying to capitalize on what they perceive to be somebody else's misfortune. And it's not that I don't understand it. I get it. I know what they're doing. Which makes people very hesitant to trust what I'm saying. Listen, this is simple for me. Come into my office, 25 minutes. A lot of times for 25 minutes, I get on the phone with a bank on a 3-way call, get an assistance application, help them fill it out, get the supporting documentation, and boom, they're back in the good graces with the bank. And that is not hard work for me.
One of the things you said, I don't know if it was in the bio or in the, it's one of the things I read about you was the bank can be your biggest ally.
Absolutely. Sure. Right? We're deathly afraid of them.
Yeah.
And I get it. There was a time in my life when I had 2 years of unopened mail on my dining room table. In hindsight, the answers to my problems were in that pile.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But we don't think that the very entity that's coming after us is the one that can help us. We don't think that. And the average consumer has no earthly idea. They're overwhelmed and they're intimidated. They don't know what to say. They're riddled with shame, first of all, unreasonable guilt, and so they don't know what to do. And there seems to be there are some really great ways to stop a foreclosure from happening. And my favorite one that I see on a regular basis is most banks are willing to do what's called a partial claim mortgage. And what that means is they take the arrearage, the past due amount, they tack it onto a second mortgage on the back end, not due and payable until either the maturity of your original note or you sell the property. They record that note at 0% with no payments due, as long as the fair bargain is in about 60 days, you can resume your normal payments. That can be done 70% of the time if you act relatively quickly. The larger the arrears, the longer you wait, the less willing the bank is to do that. And so the more people I can get into a program like that, especially with the interest rates tripling in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
You don't want a loan modification when you fall into this situation, because a modification of the terms closes at today's current rates. So many of these people are in trouble at 2.5% mortgage rates.
Wow.
If you can keep that in place, handle the arrearage and keep your normal mortgage in place, it's cheaper than rent to stay in that payment.
All right. Last question before the second break.
Yeah.
No, I'm hearing this, and it's you can tell your passion. When did you decide you wanted to start this nonprofit?
2019, I started doing this work, and I started to realize that it did something for me. It was rewarding. It was non-monetary. It wasn't about going after money. This was about something that was so simple and easy to me, meant so much to people. And when I identified that, which I identified relatively quickly in 2019, I started doing it as just a guy. I was like, hey, whatever. I don't need an entity, whatever. Just let's go, And
Yeah.
I brought a few hostages with me here in my office who seemed to like what I was doing, and we started having fun and we made it, a couple
And really
days.
helping people.
Yeah, a couple days a week we come in here and pick up the phone, start calling these people. And so, but to actually form the nonprofit, we did that this year. We're pending 501(c) status, and it is our intent to be nationwide.
Wow.
There are two inalienable truths about this, right? No bank in America wants to foreclose. No homeowner in America wants to be foreclosed on. Those are inalienable truths no matter what state you're in. And I believe that there's a place for us.
All right. We're going to take a break right here. We'll be back in one more minute with Mike Russell.
You're listening to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan on W4CY Radio. That's W4CY.com. Don't go away. More helpful information is coming right up, right here on Winning Business Radio.
The YP.com website is your local search engine. If you're looking for a good restaurant, it can help you find the right one nearby with ratings and reviews. Or if your car breaks down, you can use the YP app to find the closest repair shop. Or maybe you're just looking for something to do on a Friday night. Well, it has great local coupons for all sorts of things in your area. No matter what, when, or where, if you're looking for something, YP Local Search can help you find it. So go to YP.com or download the app to search local, find local, and save local.
And now back to Winning Business Radio with Kevin Hallinan, presenting exciting topics and expert guests with one goal in mind, to help you succeed in business. Here once again is Kevin Hallinan.
We're back with Mike Russell, who is an award-winning Century 21 broker owner and the founder of Hope for Hardship. Mike, you and others, who else provides services, and you don't charge for any of these services?
We do not. Nope. We do not charge anything for these services ever. I have a processor on the team and two co-founders who help me do this work, and it's a passion.
So then the next question is, where does that funding for those for the work
self-funded
come from?
Self-funded.
Wow.
Yeah. At this stage of the game, it's just something that myself and the co-founders fund, the work that we do. Go ahead. And
to grow, you're going to need others of like mind, or you're going to need some type of income, correct?
I think that I think that the vast majority of the time that goes into this is it's time, right? I'm fortunate, really grateful and blessed to be in a place where I have another mode of earnings. I have an outstanding gentleman that runs my real estate business for me that I can trust, which sometimes takes a lifetime to find. Yeah. And so I'm in an amazing position to be able to donate my time, which is essentially what I'm doing.
And I asked you a quick interjection just for the audience. I asked you pre-show how much time you devote. I didn't expect the answer. I was impressed, but I did not expect you to say 40 hours.
Yeah, I would say definitely 40 hours. Yeah.
Every full time.
Yeah. Monday through Friday. This is where I live in this space. I 9 o'clock this morning to start the week on Monday. I was on the phone with a woman in her bank. And it really hasn't stopped. The only thing I really stopped to do here was we're getting ready for a Santa event here. So reluctantly, I got involved in that for a minute.
Nice. And you had to take a leak at one point. You might have to sandwich too. Who knew?
Yeah. Right. But yeah, no, this is my focus exclusively. Yeah. This is what I enjoy doing. Wow. And it creates amazing moments,
So take us through the process. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, please.
Finish that thought. Then take us through the process of how it works.
Yeah, so the process is pretty simple, right? We operate off a basic service agreement, right? And the service agreement, all it outlines is what my expectations are you, the consumer. And those are things like, please be proactive. when we request supporting documentation, please provide it in a timely manner, et cetera, et cetera. And then we just kind of describe the services that we'll provide. And so what happens here is there's an intake, and in the intake we get pertinent information: who's your bank, loan number, those kinds of things. We get a third-party authorization.
I was just going to ask. Yeah.
So we can communicate directly with the lender. We do a three-way call up front with the lender and the consumer to kind of give them an idea of what we're doing. And a lot of lenders are different and just kind of navigate how they do it. We provide the creation of the assistance application, the hardship letter, all the editorialization that needs to go in, because what we're really doing is we're building a case for the consumer, right? We're building a case that will get the bank to a place where they are comfortable, and their underwriters are, that this is a viable bet, that we can bet on this consumer to resume their normal payments if we just give them a little help on this. And then the most powerful thing we do, honestly, is every 3 business days we follow up with the bank to get a status update. I can't tell you how many times consumers, I'd say 50% of the people I talk to say, I already did that. I submitted an application 3 months ago. I never heard anything. And it's human condition stuff, like we convince ourselves when we're in these downtrodden places that it's the bank's job to chase us. No, it's not. It's your job to chase the bank. I've been doing this for a long time, and I don't think, maybe once, that I've ever submitted an assistance application that the bank deemed complete. There's just no such thing. Every single time there's missing documentation or further documentation.
So it's underwriting again.
Absolutely. Sure.
Okay.
No, it doesn't even get to underwriting until the bank deems it certified complete.
Okay.
That process can take anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks to get a bank on the same page and for all parties to say, yep, it's ready for underwriting.
Now, in the meantime, are they okay with not getting a payment?
Okay is a tough statement.
Yeah.
Go that far, right? But here's the important thing. They have not and will not pause any foreclosure proceedings until the file is under review. Certified complete gets it under review. During the review period, they will pause further foreclosure proceedings.
Okay.
It won't take one more step until the review is underway, until the review it spits out a results letter, right?
So what is the difference between collection efforts and foreclosure?
Foreclosure is the worst. Besides bankruptcy in America, as far as credit is related, bankruptcy and foreclosure are very similar. They're public events that go onto your credit report that make you unbankable in traditional lending for an extended period of time. So foreclosure is when it's a secured debt, right? So boats, cars, homes, that's secured debt that has collateral. And they're coming back and taking that collateral because, we may raise families in these homes and we may have great memories and bad memories, but in the eyes of the bank, it's simply collateral. That's all it is.
Property. Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
It's collateralized debt. And so, and the collection, banks kind of stop trying to collect after a while. And what really frustrates the consumer is once you fall 2 months behind in America on a mortgage, they won't take your money unless it's all of it. And so I hear it constantly. We tried to make a payment. They won't take my money. They won't take my money. And so these people really just not in the know, and they shouldn't be, don't understand that, yes, the banks stop taking your money because you either have to pay it all or you have to go through some sort of program with them to flush it all out and figure out where you stand. And I've had people send checks to the bank for 5 months and the bank just never cashed them. They won't do it. And so once you fall behind, they don't try particularly hard to collect the money. They send letters, they call, but they're, after 2 months, they're not looking for you to make a payment. They're just notifying you of your rights. They're letting you know that the 90-day right to cure period has begun. They're following all the verbiage in a loan, the 70-page loan doc that no one ever reads.
Yeah. They're fulfilling their obligation in the event of.
That's
right?
it.
Yeah.
That what they are effectively doing is they're hedging their bet and they're protecting themselves to be able to foreclose on the property legally. That's really all a bank begins to do.
So are they, once they understand what you're doing, are they, the bank now, generally happy to hear from you? I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
hell
happy
yeah.
is a strong word, but they're
Oh, yeah,
cooperative?
no, it's phenomenal, and you said you were a sales consultant, and I
Mhm.
try to explain this to these people all the day. All it takes is charm, understanding, and a little salesmanship with a
Mhm.
bank.
Mhm.
Something that the person, the debtor, is incapable of providing, and that's that emotional barrier.
Yeah. And maybe knowledge too, for sure, right?
Of course, sure,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
so I have no problem being cheery. A bank doesn't piss me off
Yeah.
ever because
Yeah.
it's not my if it was my problem, it would.
Yeah.
Believe me,
Yeah.
I'd be throwing stuff and I'd be pissed, and that's the average consumer
Yeah.
when they are the ones up against it. Now, me coming in and being that go-between, I'm able to accomplish more than a pissed off consumer can on hold.
One of the stats I wanted people to hear, and this is conditional.
Yeah,
So just Mike, this is for the audience now.
sure.
The stat was 100% of the time, you guys are able to save the home from foreclosure if the homeowner stays in consistent contact and provides all the documentation, and doesn't quit.
That is
100%.
100.
50%,
Yeah.
homeowners let go of the persistence required. And that's an emotional thing too, right?
Yeah.
They get tired, they get beat down perhaps.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
don't, it's like I said, I think I said that if you're behind on your mortgage payments, you have other problems in your life.
Yeah.
And those other problems are pressing and they are daily and they are incessant and they are deeply emotional typically. And that was certainly my experience. And whether that's divorce or God forbid you lost your partner or whatever it is, there are things that make your house feel inconsequential, or certainly the bank.
Yeah, your kid's sick or God forbid, dying of cancer is
Sure.
awful, right? Yeah.
It's yes, there's tragedy out there, and so but that is absolutely true. 100% of the time, you can avoid foreclosure. There is always another option.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the hardest things that I ever faced in my life, and it was denial based, and it was a failure to accept
Mm.
a truth that I was not prepared to accept. And so many people, this is a commonality. And I wish someone like me had sat down and looked me in the eye and said, I just want you to understand that at some stage of this game, you are going to have to leave this home.
Yeah.
And the only choice that you really have is, are you going to do it on the bank's terms or are you going to do it on your terms?
Oh, that's really good. Yeah.
And that's the reality. And that is the hardest conversation I have with people and the hardest reality to face, because we look around and so many times people can't see the forest through the trees. And I was tremendously guilty of it myself. The actual cause of the problems in a lot of these people's life is the home.
Mm.
They can't afford it. It's not reasonable. Circumstances have changed, but we grow entitled because it's ours.
Mm.
We think it's ours, but the reality is until the bank is paid off, it's not ours. And so those feelings are very real and raw, and people do not want to face the reality that they are going to have to leave their home. If that is in fact true, and we've exhausted every assistance opportunity, one of the crazy things that's happening right now that I've never seen, and I don't think ever in the history of the real estate market this has ever been true. I'm not recommending this.
Yeah.
But we have sold properties this year that the people didn't pay their mortgage for 3 years and they walked away with a bag.
Wow.
And so we recently sold a home for a woman that she hadn't paid her mortgage in 3 years, and she got a check for $196,000 at the closing. And that's because of the completely unreasonable and not real appreciation in values.
Okay.
Values have gone up so much. Typically in America, when you fall behind on your mortgage, if you do that long enough, you're underwater. But with the ridiculous appreciation in values, people are literally going a year, 2, sometimes 3, not paying their mortgage at all, selling their house traditionally, and they still get a bag of money.
Wow.
I've never seen it in my life, and I probably won't ever again. But again, I'm not recommending that. It's not a sound prospect, but
So crystal ball, because you brought it up.
yeah.
Where do you see I was going to say rates. That's not the right question. Where do you see home values going in the next few years?
I see them being tremendously adjusted. I think that we have an inventory problem in America. We don't have enough housing, right?
Especially in New England, Massachusetts in particular, right?
Sure, it's very colonized and there's not a lot of land and you don't see a lot of tract housing and developments being, and so it's a building problem. But the reality is that there are a lot of people in golden handcuffs. And a lot of people, a lot of my friends, whatever, my family are in golden handcuffs, and golden handcuffs are, well, you don't really love your house, but I love my 2.5% rate.
Yeah.
And so even if someone's family's expanding or their circumstances have changed and they're spreading the barrier of their home, they'll sit tight, because in order to level up to the 5-bedroom, 3.5 bath colonial, your mortgage payment's going to quadruple.
Wow.
And so people are staying in their homes longer, because even if you didn't buy in 2020 and 2021, you refied. If you were in a place where you could, you refied into a very low interest 30-year fixed mortgage. They're not going anywhere. And so I don't see, until the inventory problem is solved, and I don't know what does that. And historically in real estate, if there's a job problem, it'll fix the inventory problem, because people will start selling or, God forbid, losing their homes.
Right.
But I would say that our issue in real estate today is an inventory problem. We don't have sufficient inventory. Still today, even with rates 6.5%, 7%, there are 6 to 8 well-qualified buyers for every home on the market today.
Wow.
And as long as that's the case, then demand will remain high, and so will values.
All right, we need to start wrapping up. I have a few more questions here.
Sure,
who in the audience, both listening and viewing, and those that are going to listen to this later in podcast form, who in that audience should reach out to you? Why? And the contact info is in the crawl, so you don't have to talk about that. But who should reach out and why?
Anybody struggling to make their mortgage payments. And
sooner the better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Time is the enemy in these situations. The sooner you act, the sooner you do something, the more options are available to you by the bank. You don't have to wait until it becomes public record. Here in Massachusetts, it's hard to say exactly, but it's about 6 months of non-payment, and you will see a bank make a public recording of a notice of intent to foreclose. You don't have to wait for that to happen. The truth of the matter is 95% of U.S. households, when they fall 2 months behind on their mortgage, they never catch up on their own.
Wow.
And so
those are chunk payments. Yeah, I see what you mean.
The story that we tell ourselves in our head that we're going to figure this out, don't wait.
That's good. Hey, last question, a little more lighthearted. What do you do when you're not working?
Let's see. I ski. I like to snowmobile.
Nice.
Travel. Travel's really my favorite thing to do. We travel a lot.
Yep. Same. We do that and we ski.
Yeah.
So really a pleasure to have you here. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And thanks for sharing. And people can reach out to you. help@hopeforhardship.com is your email address. The website, of course, help4hardship, all one word, .com. Phone number was in the crawl as well. I'll share it real quick. 508-501-9214. 508-501-9214. Mike, thank you so much.
Thank you. Great to meet you.
Pleasure. And thanks everybody for watching and listening. This is a show about business and business challenges. If you've got concerns about the sales effectiveness of your company, whether your sales team is you or small, or if it's really large, it's okay either way. Feel free to reach out to me. One of my many email addresses is kevin@winningbusinessradio.com. Our company is Winning Incorporated. We're part of Sandler Training. We develop sales teams into high achievers and sales leaders into true coaches and mentors. We're not a fit for everybody, but hey, if that resonates, maybe we should have a conversation. Thank you, Juan, for another job well done. He's our producer and engineer. Join us again next Monday, December 16th. We'll do it again. Until then, this is Kevin Hallinan.
You've been listening to Winning Business Radio with your host, Kevin Hallinan. If you missed any part of this episode, the podcast is available on Talk4 Podcasting and iHeartRadio. For more information and questions, go to winningbusinessradio.com or check us out on social media. Tune in again next week and every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time to listen live to Winning Business Radio on W4CY Radio, W4CY.com. Until then, let's succeed where others have failed and win in business with Kevin Hallinan and Winning Business Radio.